Hey, welcome to my Travel Ins podcast, and today I'm lucky to have Greg Chumakov. How are you today, Greg?
Good, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Oh, excellent. Appreciate the time. Greg is the COO, make sure I get that correct, Chief Operating Officer of Treedom. Can you give my listeners kind of a background of what Treedom is?
Sure. In a nutshell, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit further into the conversation, but in a nutshell, Treedom is a service learning platform for students and schools. So we provide real-world learning opportunities and experience-based learning opportunities for students, kind of all across the U.S. And the hope is to, link learning and learning instead of learning and seat time. So we kind of curate and work with community partners to find all of these learning opportunities outside of the classroom so students can attend, learn, reflect, and create more holistic profiles about their experiences that go beyond standardized testing.
It's interesting I'm talking to you right now because of everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing, these COVID lockdowns not only affect businesses, but really cripple schools and the educational space. So, it's a very interesting and unprecedented time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of the business travelers I've talked to on my show, or several of them, I should say, have homeschooled their children because they're not at home a lot for their work, so they just take their kids with them. And now it looks like a lot of the kids are going to be at home doing distance. They're calling it distant learning. It's just interesting to see how parents are going to have to kind of evolve their life around their kids now because they're not going to be at school.
Yeah, I think the hope was to bring everybody back to school, but there's just so much liability around it and risk for not only the students but also the educators. So Los Angeles County came out and San Diego came out saying that they'll start next year distance learning. So we will continue to see this remote environment, especially within the educational space.
And I think a lot of the colleges are saying that, at least for the fall semester, that they're going to try and do distance learning.
It seems like it will be around for a while, and the school systems need to adapt to find tools that can facilitate better ways of learning outside of the classroom.
Now, do you think that the current situation is good for Treedom or bad?
So that's an interesting question. So, we're making the best out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
A big pivot that we made were a lot of our opportunities were in-person opportunities. So you would go out, provide impact in your community, volunteer, through opportunities found on Treedom. And the first move that we made is we, added the ability to upload remote virtual opportunities and then also petitions. So whether you're doing opportunities from home, like making cards to send out to the Los Angeles Mission or, grocery shopping for elderly people, to virtual opportunities like transcribing research for the Smithsonian. We made sure that our first step was to make sure that students would be able to provide impact, even though they weren't able to go outside. So it's really positioned us in a very unique way that, everything is moving online, and Treedom is a mobile application and web portal. So we do check that box of online application. And, we have seen a lot of, new customers coming in this time because, as I said, everyone's scrambling to find resources and tools that will be able to help facilitate learning. And a good amount of schools in the U.S. have mandatory service learning requirements. So, providing students with an opportunity to still give back in their communities during such a challenging time where so many people are experiencing such hardship. Sure. We've actually seen a good amount of clients come.
Well, who would your typical client be? Would it be a school district, or I don't understand how that would work? Yeah,
so we work with various partners. So high up, we work with school districts. So we're talking to LAUSD, smaller school networks like Green Dot Charter Schools. We work with them, and then even private schools or just kind of one-off schools. but our main target right now are high schoolers. So any and all high schools.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it'd be a perfect fit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you probably a strange question.
Mm-hmm.
Millennials tend to get a bad rap, in my opinion.
Okay.
As far as being flaky and all that.
Yeah.
Especially after just hearing the first 5 minutes talking to you. So why do you think that is? I'm just curious from your age group.
Why do we tend to be flaky?
No. Why do you think you get the rap as being flaky? I mean, there's millennials that are out, sharp, witty, smart, doing something for their communities, like yourself and Michael, you're the CEO of your company.
Yep.
So why do you think millennials get such a bad rap? I don't know why that is, because I mean, we were all in our early 20s.
There's a lot of opportunities out there, and there are a lot of distractions.
Okay.
A lot of distractions right now in terms of, what social media can do, that, everyone is spread very thin in terms of their focus. And oftentimes, the millennials can focus on the wrong things. So I think it's, lack of priority sometimes, or just in general not being too focused. That can often, bring that bad rap that we unfortunately tend to see.
I gotcha. I mean, don't get me. I have a 25 and 26-year-old daughters.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of them are the stereotypical millennials. I just know why. Because we were all in our early 20s, and we all screwed off and did bad things, and I don't know. I was just you're very smart, and you've got a deeper purpose than just wanting to go out to the bar tonight. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was a very interesting question. But yeah, I grew up overseas. I grew up in Singapore, and I've been fortunate enough to experience a lot that now where I'm in a position where I can, give back and have an impact. Really, the work that we're doing at Treedom resonated with me, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm lucky to find something that I've been so passionate about so early, because I hope that I can continue this mission. Helping the educational space, helping our students, our youth, and I'm very lucky that I found this passion early.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next. Was do you think being born overseas? I mean, obviously you wouldn't know because you have nothing to reference it. But
right.
Do you think it did help you being born overseas and not?
I think so. So both my parents are U.S. citizens, and I was born a U.S. citizen in Singapore. So,
right.
I lived there until I graduated high school. So, a good 18 years, and I was able to travel around, and even from an early age, I was, giving back and volunteering. I would travel to Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, whether that was building houses or, going to visit schools and donate supplies. But I was able to travel around, experience different cultures. Even my international school in Singapore was very diverse. And I think everyone was, moving from Singapore or moving to Singapore. The average span of a friend in Singapore was unfortunately like 2 to 3 years. So I think it really just opened my eyes to perspective and possibility of meeting so many people and visiting so many different countries that I definitely do think that it helped.
I totally agree with you. Both my daughters have traveled more than I have internationally, and my younger daughter's definitely. I mean, she's been to Japan, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Moscow, London, France. I'm trying to think of all the places. My other daughter's been to Ireland and New Zealand, and I think that's what kind of does make you more well-rounded when you see the world in a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think it's creating that big picture, that holistic understanding of, we're small people in a very big place, and just understanding the different cultures and ideals and, ways of life, throughout the world. it really, provides for you to kind of open your eyes a little bit and become more well-rounded.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, and I think we've kind of been answering the question, but as far as, what do you enjoy about traveling? Mm-hmm. And you just answered that. Is there any bad part about it?
I think the hardest part about it is just, fitting everything into the short amount of time that you have in all of these places that you're visiting.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going for vacation, there's so much that you can see, so much that you can experience in all of these different countries, but unfortunately you don't always have the luxury to be there for more than a couple of days or a week. So I think, fitting in everything in these trips is one thing. And then also just, especially when we talk about traveling internationally, it's just dealing with that jet lag. And, having a good routine of, making sure that you're well hydrated on these flights, kind of adjust for the time difference. So you make sure that when you land, given that you don't have a lot of time in these places, you can really hit the ground running.
And maximize it, yeah. I think that's the biggest thing is, internationally, is talking to people is jet lag.
Yeah, jet lag. And, growing up, my mom was very big on, we land, we go to the hotel, we freshen up, and then we're out and about seeing things. So we can really experience the whole thing. And then by the time it was dinner, when I was a kid, we were all falling asleep at the dinner table. Exactly. But at least we had that, experience, like our first day we saw there, and we weren't just laying around in the hotel room, but is really kind of making an effort to beat that jet lag.
I think that's the best way to do it. And so, some people just deal with it better than others, I think. Mm-hmm. Cause my wife,
everyone's body is different, and it really takes a toll. Long travel and being in an airplane for that long, sometimes not laying back fully and being seated the whole time for, upwards of 12 hours, it really takes a toll on everybody differently.
And my wife hates traveling, and it doesn't bother me a bit. It's just weird.
Yeah.
So, but that's probably why I travel.
Probably.
Yeah. How much traveling are you doing for Treedom right now? Are you going out to different school districts, or are you doing it all remotely? Obviously not during the COVID, but prior to it.
Yeah. So we've been around for, a year and a half now. In that period of time, we designed, developed, piloted, went to market, and now have, a handful of schools and a lot of students using our platform right now. So prior to COVID, we were traveling a lot. We were going, up and down day trips to San Francisco, out towards the Bay, and then, to Nashville, New York, New Jersey, really talking to all of these, school leaders or just stakeholders in the educational space, floating our idea, kind of pitching to these schools and trying to land contracts. So, now that COVID's around, we can't necessarily, meet all of these educators. And also now is, another interesting time because we're obviously in the summer months of the school year. So it's particularly slow right now, but, we are positioned very well that, even during the summer months, we're seeing a lot of activity because everyone is so unsure about what the new school year is going to be like. So prior to COVID, we were, I think it was, every 2 weeks, maybe every week, we were going to meet with different school leaders. But now everything is just kind of remote and on the phone and doing demos through Zoom and all of that type of stuff. So it definitely is different.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you is, in so many businesses and the way people conduct business is going to change with this. And if it becomes the norm, if you and your company get really good at doing this remotely, it could be a good thing in the sense of you won't have to be gone and you'll still be able to conduct business and get new business from it.
Yeah, exactly. When we were to, travel up the coast for a meeting, that meeting would take the whole day. And even if that meeting was only 2-3 hours, it would end up being, a full day commitment. With these conferences and these remote demos, it really makes, fitting 3-4 meetings into a day if you need to, and it doesn't, suck out all of your energy for just that one meeting.
When you were traveling, how did you fill up your time? Meaning, if you were flying, were you trying to do work projects, or were you just saying, "Hey, I'm going to zone out and watch movies or watch a video"?
So prior to traveling a lot for work, I was really someone that couldn't read or do any work on a plane, anything moving of that sort. So I would often spend a lot of my time sleeping, through transit.
Sure.
But, now that it's kind of short day trips, a good amount of that time is actually listening to podcasts for the most. Something that, can keep me busy. And, I obviously take a lot of these meetings with Mike, our CEO. So we spend a good amount of the time on the plane kind of prepping ourselves for the meeting, and just talking through what our points will be, and, understanding how we can make the best out of this meeting, because we're both removing ourselves from the office for a full day.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I mean, that's what I find too. It's like I just conducted my first Zoom meeting with my largest customer because somebody in their office came down with COVID, so we had to do it remotely, and it was weird. But my VP of sales was at his house in Columbus, Ohio, and I was here, and my two buyers were down in Orange County, and it's like, whoa, I didn't even have to leave my house.
Everyone's all over the place now.
Yeah, but like you just said, I mean, now my boss didn't have to spend 36 hours traveling.
Right.
The plane, the gas, the rental cars, the hotels, the food. So the company saved money in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, was it as effective? I don't know. I mean, obviously it was a first for all of us, but I think, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to become the new norm. It'll be weird.
Yeah, I think that, if in my opinion, I think it probably will be, mainly for an efficiency standpoint. So, understanding that I have one meeting in the bay, that, for maximum 2 hours, but it's going to take me a full day. It's really going to fragment my week up, and kind of having to, manage work and, stay connected while traveling that day. I think that if meetings can be taken online, then they probably will be. There will be the exceptions for, larger scale meetings where if we were to meet with the head of a school district, we would probably make the effort to go out and see them. But, if something can be done virtually now, I think it will be. If you compare this to, a year ago, if we had a meeting and someone suggested we take it over Zoom, I think it would just kind of be unheard of and kind of offensive to suggest that we do a first meeting over Zoom.
I'm with you on that. That's exactly how I feel. It's going to be, and unfortunately for me, I think it'll be harder for the older people.
Right.
I think the younger crowd, saying, "Oh, we're going to do this digital," it's like, "Oh, okay." Whereas the older people are like, "What? No."
Yeah. And I think, all these tools, they do make it, somewhat easier for the older generations where, if you're creating the Zoom link, or if you're creating the Zoom meeting, it's really easy where you just click the link and you get put into that meeting. So I think that there definitely will be a learning curve. Obviously, as you said, it is easier for the younger generations, but we'll see if it sticks, because it seems like this COVID situation will be around for a while. So adjustments and changes that have been made will probably have to stay for a while.
I think, like I said, I think it'll become the new norm. I think, I think as humans, we're kind of geared to just be, we're creatures of habit. And I've gotten in such I couldn't tell you, I had a BlackBerry forever. And then both my daughters were on iPhones, and they're like, "You got to get an iPhone." I'm like, and once I got the iPhone and got good at it, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I do this earlier? But the switch going from the actual tactile feel of the BlueBerry to a touch screen was just like, oh my God, I can't do this. And I think it's the same way.
It's something that's quite interesting that we have found, because it's that initial switch. And what we found in the educational space is there's so much change that needs to be made. Very outdated systems that were kind of structured, similar to the Industrial Revolution, where, standardized testing, you kind of progress in a very systematic way that is, the same across for all, the students. But, that change in educational systems is very slow moving, and making that initial step to something new takes a long time in the school field. And especially when you're, leaving, outdated and inefficient methods like, tracking student volunteerism through pen and paper, and going out and getting, signatures and people to, sign pieces of paper to give back to your teacher. Even though we're presenting a platform that, gets rid of pen and paper, makes everything digital through an app or a web portal, it's that step, it's that change that is very hard. But once people do it, oftentimes they find themselves, much happier than they were before, because, it turns into the new norm of we've changed from paper to technology.
Well, I think that, and what do I know? I don't know that much about your business, but it seems like this is going to, Treedom's going to happen at the exact right time with the COVID, because all these administrators are being forced now to use digital and media, because if they're going to start doing the remote school and all that, it's not going to be such a weird thing to talk to the administrators about using, digital media as a learning tool.
Right. Yeah. Because no one can really do the pen and paper thing right now.
Yeah.
So that really kind of accelerates us forward. And I think it also comes at a really good time because of the drop. Well, one, there's COVID, and two, there was the schools moving towards getting rid of standardized testing. So, SAT, ACTs, and kind of the standardized testing contributes to inequities in our education system. So as schools move away from these standardized tests, they need something to capture the learning of these students. So that's also where we come into play, where we're not only the technological solution, but we also provide a more holistic understanding for these students, where they can go, research and learn about the impact and action that they're about to go to take. They can reflect on that, link it to core competencies or learning objectives, whether that's leadership skills, communication, problem solving, more real world experiences, and then, use that to supplement or support their college applications as we see more schools, go further and further away from, the standard SAT or ACT.
Well, I also think, and I know you guys were part of the laptop giveaway, and I think by doing that and getting kids, that weren't able to afford a laptop, if you're doing that and you're getting them up to speed on what it's going to take to be successful when they get out.
Yeah, exactly. We so right when COVID hit, we work with a lot of low income schools. So right when COVID hit, we realized that a lot of these students just don't have access to internet or computers.
Yeah.
Which, putting Treedom aside, they can't connect with their peers. They can't do any of their work. A lot of the students that we spoke to were trying to get all of their classwork done through their phones. So it was not a very sustainable way to do it. So, as COVID was kind of going through the U.S., we donated a couple hundred Chromebooks to a handful of students that kind of went through a submission process. And then we also work with Green Dot Public Schools to supply a couple hundred of their students computers as well, because again, Treedom aside, we're moving into a technological era of education, and it provides for a lot of inequities where so many of our students in the U.S. right now don't have access to computer and let alone internet. Yeah. So it's something that through these giveaways that we try and give out gift cards for Barnes and Nobles for students to pick summer reading books or these laptops. We do try to help our students other than the benefits that we see Treedom providing.
And I think that to me that seems like so key, because when you apply for a job nowadays, it's not like when I was a kid. I mean, you can apply for 100 jobs if you know how to use the internet. Mm-hmm. By getting your resume on the laptop and getting into a PDF file, and then just being able to learn attachments and all that. I mean, if you can give those kids that upper hand, so when they get out there, they can really start using it.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of unfortunately, for a lot of these students, like just having access to a computer and internet, is considered giving them an upper hand, but that should really be the norm, yeah. In the U.S. It's like when we were doing these giveaways, we were in a position where we wish we had more computers, because we realized, it's such a big issue. It's such a big issue in Los Angeles, where we're based out of, but all over the country. And, we take the stance that, having access to, internet and a computer to supplement learning should be a basic right. It's where we're moving. And for those students that don't have that access, they're really just so far behind kind of the norm or what the system should be like.
Yeah. And just I think companies like Treedom is going to make that more of the norm.
Right. That's what we hope.
Well, just the fact that the more exposure you get, and the more times you're in front of a school district, and the more times you're in front of the school board, and giving them reasons to make it the norm. And now, like I said, with the remote learning, that's going to be a requirement. Mm-hmm. I almost wonder. It's like, what are kids going to do that don't have access to the internet during this fall season?
Yeah, so that's something that a lot of our school partners that we work with, we've had these conversations as well. And what a lot of these schools are doing, and I do applaud Green Dot Public Schools for doing this, is they made sure that they went and they raised money to make sure every single one of their students had a personal computer. Granted, it was loaned to them, so they would have to give it back at the end of the school year. And every student that didn't have access to internet, they would give them a wireless router. Okay. So they have, I think it's like 22 schools in the country. Most of them are in California. I think one's in Tennessee and then one's in Washington State. And they made sure that they went out and they raised money to ensure that every single student had access to the internet.
And and being selfish in a sense, that only helps you.
Yeah, and it was great to see, because they were a school partner of Treedom. Uh-huh. So it was great to see, but just kind of the quick initiative that the leadership took in order to ensure their students had access was something very admirable to see. But it does help our efforts of making sure that students do have access, not only to engage with Treedom, but also just to help learning during these tough times.
Do you think when you were in college, mm-hmm. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, or did Treedom just kind of happen and you went, "That sounds great"?
So I was on a completely different career path when I was in university.
Okay.
So growing up in Singapore, my dad was a commodities trader. So my mom and dad, they're still based in Singapore right now. And my dad's whole career was based off of commodity trading. So, growing up around a trader, the son of a trader, it was something that I was very interested in. Fast moving markets, always traveling, it's got that international aspect to it. So when I was in university, I was set on being a trader, and I wanted to be a oil and gas trader. So that's kind of what I was focused on. And I was an economics major with a business administration minor. All of my internships prior to this were in the oil industry. And it wasn't until, it's completely different than what I'm doing now.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I learned a lot in the space, work ethic, just kind of attention to detail, how cutthroat companies and industries can be. My first 2 years out of university, or a year and a half, it was probably the most valuable work experience that I could get. Meeting deadlines, staying on top of everything. It was just a very rewarding experience. But my sophomore year in university, I met Michael, the CEO, and we were kind of playing around with this idea. And then senior year, we ended up staying in the same place, and we got a house together for our senior year. And we were kind of developing the idea of what Treedom could be. And he asked if I wanted to work on Treedom with him after we graduated. But I was pretty set on still pursuing the oil and gas industry. So I went into oil and gas. And it wasn't until, a year and 10 months after working in the oil and gas industry where Michael kind of contacted me again and was like, look, I think we were really onto something. He had made, a great amount of progress. I came to visit him in Los Angeles for a weekend. I got back to DC on a Monday. I gave my 2-week notice. I finished work on a Friday and started work in Los Angeles the Monday after. So, the switch to Treedom was very quick, and it's something that, I would do again.
Well, yeah, hopefully. Yeah, that's a cool story, actually.
It's a real 180 there. I was on track for a very, very different career, and just seeing and understanding the impact that technology can give, especially in the educational space. It's something that I knew that we could provide a lot of help, and it's something that I wanted to be part of.
Well, I think you'll be able to relate to a lot of people after this COVID. I mean, you're going to have a tremendous amount of people that are going to have to create a 180.
Right.
I mean, there's companies every day closing down that I hear of. And, people are, it's not so much like J. Crew files bankruptcy, and that means nothing. But then if you look at all the suppliers that supply products and goods to J. Crew,
mm-hmm.
Well, if they don't have to supply them, then maybe they have to find a new job. And Chuck E. Cheese goes out of business. Everyone's like, but, Chuck E. Cheese paid a lot of money out. They paid the landlord. They paid the electricity. Right. They paid vendors who provided all the products and goods and food. So you're going to have a lot of people looking out for different things. And that's why I think your story of flipping and in some ways it's kind of like you were in it for the greed on trading, and now you're in it for the good, for giving opportunities to children. I mean, that's Michael often refers it to, he pulled me from the dark side. Exactly.
And I think that it was a 180, and it did take some time to commit to the decision. But once I committed, once I kind of understood what I would be kind of setting my focus on moving forward, it definitely has been extremely rewarding this whole time. And, especially seeing just how much need there is throughout communities, and how much untapped talent there is with students, and inefficiencies in the educational space right now. There's just such a void that if we can fill that void with technology and different products, we are really, really helping our youth. And to not do that is just such a disservice to our youth right now, because they're next.
I'm going to say, well, yeah, you're actually helping me, because I want the people coming up when I go to retirement age, I want them to be able to take care of business.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And if we don't provide them with the tools right now, then we're just going to be worse off than we thought we were.
Yeah.
So, very happy that I made this switch, and it's been really good. It's been exciting. We've been growing very rapidly, and seeing a lot of tangible progress and reward coming from the work that we're doing, seeing the impact that these students are giving, the value that they're creating into their communities, and then again, creating these graduate profiles for these students to help them down the line for jobs, internships, or applications.
Have you? Is there a thought, or maybe a longer term plan where if you could pair up with a large company that would potentially buy computers for you to be able to give to the school districts that has Treedom installed in it already?
Yeah, so there are a lot of opportunities where we're trying to speak to different stakeholders to see how we can make sure that students have access to phones to access Treedom, but then also to computers. And it's something that, as we were developing, we were getting a good amount of pushback where some of the schools would come back and say, unfortunately, not all of our students have phones, or not all of our students have computers. When schools do have resources like libraries where they can go and access the computer, that's one thing, but now that's not the case. And as I said, we did donate a couple hundred Chromebooks to all of these students, but we wish we had more.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, because the school districts are going to have a real issue coming up in about 2 months when LA and San Diego being the first two school districts. But those are huge school districts. Millions of kids are now going to be forced to learn from home. So if they don't have a computer, how is the school district going to provide or get that child a computer?
Yeah, I think we will see, or we will have to see help from these companies to provide these computers at either low or no cost. But it is a very interesting situation, because it just provides for more inequity in the system. So those that are living in more extreme situations where they don't have the ability to access internet or computers at home, they are just being hurt a little bit more than those students that do. So, unfortunately, it is hurting our students that are living below the poverty line, which is a massive amount in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it just will perpetuate that unless we can make sure that they do have the tools that they need.
But I think one of the bigger hurdles that you're going to find from the school boards is going to be at least partially eliminated, because parents, families, school districts are going to have to give their kids some kind of access. So
right,
your biggest hurdle is now being overcome by the COVID.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen. A lot of the pushback hasn't been, changing from their current structure. Everyone knows that they need to make a change and they need to adapt. So it wasn't, or before it was, as I mentioned, moving to technology. Now they're kind of put in a corner where they do need to move to technology. So we have seen unfortunately, some good come out of COVID to make sure that students are moving online and entering kind of the 21st century of learning.
Yeah, I think it's good timing for you and the company.
Yeah, it was. We, obviously, when COVID hit, everyone was scrambling of how COVID's going to affect us. Are we going to be okay? And it took kind of a week or so for us to realize where, wow, there could be an opportunity for us to do a lot of good right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pain and suffering and death and sickness right now. And just so many hard times where we kind of sat down and we brainstormed and we said, actually this does provide for a good opportunity for us to do a lot of good. We've made sure to use these opportunities and kind of expand Treedom and grow Treedom to make sure that as many students as needed do have access to our platform.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Greg. I mean, I'm always surprised, and in 2008 when they had the recession here,
mm-hmm.
And I still recall going through it being like, oh my God, end of the world.
Right.
I mean, it was literally, what are we all going to do? And, 2 years later, a lot of good came out of it. But when you're going through it, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be the same way with this. Everyone's going to figure out how to adapt and hopefully make it a better time for everybody.
Yeah, and figuring out how to adapt, specifically to each industry or company, that's going to be the difficult part, and we've gone through this for a couple of months right now where I think companies are starting to understand what pivots they need to make.
Yeah.
But, the hope is that we can all grow from this. We can make changes that will benefit for us students, but whether that's consumers, adults, parents, or whoever it may be, can benefit from decisions that we're making right now that we're forced to make because of this pandemic that's going on. Hopefully, people can see that good can come out of this situation if it's done correctly, and just understanding what can be done is key.
Yeah, it's going to open up opportunities and the possibilities, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, hey man, I appreciate the time. What's the best way for people to follow up with you or Treedom?
Of course, yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to contact me, and the best way to learn about what Treedom is doing. You can visit us at treedom.co. That's .co. And we're kind of active on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're constantly finding ways to give back to students and give back to our communities and schools. So we do some giveaways, whether that's gift cards for the school books or, Chromebook giveaways, or kind of other supplies to, even nonprofit organizations. So we are very active in the community. So I would recommend people take a look at the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I know. On your Instagram page, you have a lot of the Barnes & Noble gift cards and stuff like that. So,
yeah, that's the most recent thing that we're doing right now.
And I'll make sure to include. So, if any of the listeners want information on Greg and Treedom, just go to my website, and then I'll have all the links, and they can just click on, and it'll take them right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, hey, Greg, I appreciate the time, bud. And,
of course, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
I wish you the best. So you're doing good work.
Thank you.
So, hey, hopefully we'll stay in touch. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks,
you.
Greg.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.